So welcome everybody who has joined us online today. And we start with our webinar series today, Textile Dyes of the Past and Future, sharing the Colour4CRAFTS experience. And this series brings together EU Horizon Project Colour4CRAFTS members and important guests to discuss and share their knowledge on textile dyes of the past and future. And the series is brought together by the University of Tartu and Viljandi Culture Academy in collaboration with Estonian Academy of Arts. And just to remind you that Colour4CRAFTS members are the University of Helsinki, University of Lapland, University of Tartu, Kirpa, University of Leeds, and Pilibhio. And today presenting are Riina Rammo, Associate Professor of Archaeology, Tartu University, and Liis Luhamaa, Textile Specialist, Tartu University, and they are both Colour4CRAFTS members, and Riina Rammo is the leader of the Colour4CRAFTS Tartu team. And today they are presenting about the dye world of the past, Estonian archaeological and historical textiles, and I do not want to take up any more of their time, so the floor is yours, Riina and Liis.
Thank you very much for this introduction. And good evening from my side, and warm welcome to this lecture. My name is Riina Rammo. I don't know if you can see me, but Riina Rammo is speaking now. And what about this webinar? Some more words. The interplay between historical knowledge and modern innovation within this project has inspired personally me. And I think also Kerttu and Liis to organize this lecture series. And just for notification for you, today we are speaking about the past practices. And the next following sessions, we will explore topics including chemistry of natural dyes, textile art, mordanting processes, and the role of dyeing in the contemporary fashion industry. So I hope it combines also all these different aspects of natural dyes topic. But yes, as the time is limited, so now I will continue with the today's topic because it was really hard to solve the huge theme with such a short time. First, this lecture is my part is based on archaeological textile finds found in Estonia, and the dye analysis done in two laboratories, Royal Institute for Cultural Heritage in Brussels and Cultural Heritage Agency of the Netherlands. The first institution is also the member of the current project Colour4CRAFTS. And I won't speak about the method. You can see here the basic information about that. And also it's based on these reports, unpublished reports made by the colleagues from the laboratories. But the beginning. When did start textile dyeing in Estonian area? This is a really interesting question to me, although we cannot answer that. Archaeological finds, primarily from burial sites, serve as the main source of information on the history of textile dyeing in Estonia up until the 17th century. However, it remains difficult to pinpoint exactly when the practice of dyeing textiles first reached the Eastern Baltic region, and more specifically, the area of present-day Estonia. The widespread use of cremation burials, in which both the body and associated grave goods, including textiles, were burnt, has left us with very little early evidence. As a result, the first substantial archaeological corpus of textiles in Estonia dates only to the first half of the 11th century, when inhumation the practice of burying unburnt bodies once again became common. These finds suggest that textile dyeing was already a well-established craft by that time. In some cases, sophisticated dyeing techniques were clearly employed to achieve specific shades. When we consider the broader Eastern Baltic context, however, earlier examples of dyed textiles have been identified. In Scandinavia, in southern Scandinavia, for example, dyed textiles have been found dating back to the pre-Roman Iron Age. It means 500 till 1 year before Common Era, or before Christ. In Latvia and Finland, the earliest dyed textiles date from the 1st centuries AD, according to the Common Era. It means 2nd or until the 4th century. It is therefore likely that the knowledge of textile dyeing had reached the Estonian area by that time too, even though direct material evidence only appears several centuries later. And now, I introduce you the first certainly dyed textile in Estonia. It was found already in the 1870s in the Kareda bog near Pöide on Saaremaa island. And the fragment is radiocarbon dated to the Viking Age, to the 9th and 10th century. An indigoid blue dye derived from woad probably was identified in all 4 analyzed samples taken from different parts of the textile. And it's quite unique textile also technologically. So you can see while weaving, some wool tufts have been inserted into the weave or the shed, and it creates the hairy surface on one side of the textile. And woad was one of the most commonly used dye stuffs in the Baltic Sea region during that period, and I will discuss this specific dye later in the presentation. However, it is unlikely that the textile was woven locally on Saaremaa. It was probably produced elsewhere in Northern Europe and brought to the island by travelers or traders, so we cannot start the Estonian traditional dyeing techniques with this specific and unique piece. As I said, our main sources about the beginning of the textile dyeing history in Estonia are archaeological textile finds, which will become more numerous only in the 11th century. And since then, we are able to trace a continuous timeline of textile dyeing practices through archaeological evidence up to the 17th century. As you can see in the table, the main find spots have been listed here, and you can see these sites also on the map. Below, you can see the 11th, 12th century textile fragments from Rakvere Cemetery. This is the earliest site in the list, which are really well preserved, and you can see also the dyes. Sorry, it wasn't my intention. Most of these finds originate from graves, although there are a few exceptional cases linked to wealth deposits. Instances where valuables, occasionally including textiles, were deliberately hidden or abandoned. Additionally, 2 bog finds have been included in the dataset. All of the textile finds are made from sheep wool, and there are 2 main reasons for this. Firstly, plant-based fibers, primarily linen, do not preserve as well in soil conditions compared to wool. And secondly, dyeing plant fibers with natural dyes was more difficult, and as a result, linen textiles were usually left undyed. Nearly all of the recovered textile fragments are remnants of clothing. As the deceased were typically dressed in festive attire, these garments were often made from dyed textiles, as it was expensive, and represent valuable items. Both fibers and yarns were dyed during this period. However, there is no evidence to suggest that cloth was dyed in whole pieces. And I'm speaking only about the rural areas, because in medieval times, when cities, first towns and cities were established in the Estonian area, the urban craft tradition was so different, and it came from Europe. So it was taken over from Europe, other cities in Europe, and that's why I won't speak about that, but I concentrate only on Estonian local tradition. During this period, techniques were available to produce relatively stable shades of blue and red. These colors are the most commonly preserved and are often still visible today, even with the naked eye. Other dyes are far less frequently identified or documented. This is partly due to the lower durability and partly because the better preserved red and blue textiles have attracted more scholarly attention and have therefore been more thoroughly analyzed. It appears that blue and red were preferred colors for festive garments anyway, often combined with lighter or undyed yarns to create contrast. And now I will speak about blue, and more specifically about indigo blue. Various shades of blue have long been an essential color in festive clothing across centuries. From the 11th century through to the medieval period, the primary source of this color was an indigo dyestuff derived from the woad plant. In Europe, it was the main plant which was used to produce indigo blue. Indigo blue is one of the few natural wet dyes. This means it is insoluble in water and therefore extremely durable. During the dyeing process, the indigo extracted from the plant must first be reduced to a water-soluble form so that it can penetrate to the textile fibers in the dye bath. In the Eastern Baltic region, stale urine was probably used to carry out this reduction process, as also later in the historic times with indigo, with true indigo pigment. Once the wool was removed from the vat and exposed to air, you can see it on the photos in the upper row, the dye reacted with oxygen and quickly reverted to its insoluble blue form. So the textiles become blue, and it's really a magical process. It is likely that woad-derived blue dye reached in Eastern Baltic coast through trade from the very beginning. So already in the first centuries AD, it probably came to the trade, and it continued also in the 11th century. Although woad now grows as a weed in some coastal areas of Estonia, it's not native to Estonia. There is no evidence that it was ever used locally for dyeing. The traditional folk names and dyeing recipes in Estonian are absent, suggesting that it was not part of local practice. And by the 16th and 17th centuries, tropical indigo, also known as true indigo, gradually replaced woad and came to dominate the global dye market. And it also probably reached the Estonian area quite quickly. First, the urban professional craft, textile craft, and then gradually probably also spread to the rural areas, and rural population started to use it. The dyeing techniques for woad and tropical indigo are similar, and chemical analysis cannot distinguish between the two, as both produce the same indigo pigment. And I have marked here in the table 3 last records from Kivijärvi deposit and Ravivere bog find. because it is possible that these were already dyed with true indigo. But all other examples here in the table are definitely dyed with woad. And as you can see in the table, woad was often combined with other dyestuffs. And and these other dyestuffs are usually unknown. It means that the chemical composition, it's not known to the reference libraries used by the laboratories, and we don't know from which plant or from which source these unknown oranges or lichen violet blue dyes are coming. And also sometimes tannies have been discovered. And these complex processes may have aimed to achieve darker hues or to economize on the use of imported woad. And here you can see one example. This is a 12th century textile. It's almost blackish blue, and it was probably also very dark in the beginning, initially, while it was used. And as you can see, from the graph or chromatogram, complicated dyeing technique was used because it was combined with woad was combined with some kind of lichen dye, probably local, but we don't know which lichen was used, and also these again this unknown orange dye stuff. And it means that at several stages and dye baths were probably used during the dyeing process. And it's extremely durable because it has survived the deposit conditions under the earth. And the second dye we know about is the red, which is sometimes preserved until nowadays, and we can still see it in textiles. And I have titled this part Variety of Reds. Unlike indigo, which was the dominant source of blue across Europe, whether it was woad or true indigo, red dyes came from a wide range of natural sources. Yet only a few of these produced bright and lasting shades. The spectrum of reds is diverse, ranging from warm brownish tones and orange tones to cooler purples, depending on the dye source and method used. Maybe it's also interesting to note that in Estonian clothing tradition, entirely red garments are rare, and it was mostly used for decorative elements and patterns, such as etching ribbons, girdles, knitted motifs, and stripes. Oh, okay. And as you can see, also the sources are various. And what is very interesting for the researcher, frequently dye analysis have revealed unidentified red, orange, or purple dyes. And we saw the same dyes already in the previous table showing the woad dyed textiles. These are the same local red, orange, purple dyes, which are unknown until now. And sometimes unknown reds can be traced even in the 18th, 19th century textiles. So it's a long-lasting tradition to use these local dyes. And today, if looking at the preserved textile fragments, many of these dyes appear more orange or reddish brown. You can see them on the screen, some of them, and the color has changed during the archaeological deposition, but probably it was also from the beginning, it was more orange-like or brownish a little bit. it is not bright, vivid red. And as I said, they are unknown. We don't know which plants they origin. And to solve the mystery, we have studied during this project also the old dye recipes recorded in the 18th and 19th centuries. But we don't have find a match for these stones yet. And what has been looked for? We have looked for local resources such as tannin-rich tree bark and other plants, because we think that especially in the early textiles in the 11th and 12th century, maybe the mordants, these are the helping mordants are usually metal salts, which has been used to bind dye molecule to the textile fiber more firmly. And there are several possibilities to do this also without metal salts, which are mostly imported to Estonia. And we think that these early unknown orange and reddish hues are probably from the recipes, which didn't use metal salts as mordants. And so we have looked for dyes, which are direct dyes, meaning that they were just boiled with yarns or textile. And also fermenting is a possibility. If you are fermenting a textile, for example, in alkaline solution, it also helps to fix the dye molecule to the fibers. According to the current hypothesis, possible candidates producing these reddish hues could be local bark sources, as indicated by some of the compounds and the presence of tannins in some samples. The main candidates have been alder buckthorn, and birch bark, which can give red shades when using the right methods. My good colleagues in the project, Liis Luhamaa and Krista Urit, University of Helsinki, are experimented with these dyes to generate reference materials for the laboratories. But we haven't found the identification yet. Another possible source are different lichens. And I must warn you, some of them are under nature protection in Estonia, and if somebody would like to test them, then it should be really be careful and check if the lichen is freely available or not. So we have two candidates, rock tripe, Lasalia pustulata, which is direct dye, but only after the pre-treatment, which includes alkaline fermentation method, for example, similar to the woad. So it, for example, stale urine can be used. And another dye lichen is crottal, Parmelia, which is also direct dye, or also just fermentation that can be used. And both lichens can be used without mordants. And on the left, you can see two examples dyed with unknown lichens, reddish. It's now more brown, but initially it was probably a reddish tone. And it's from the 16th century. And now maybe this is more familiar to the wider audience. As I said before, most natural red dyes require the use of mordants. Also nowadays, the main recipe that people are used with natural dyes, they are using usually mordants. This is substances that help bind the dye more firmly to textile fibers. Historically, these were primarily metallic salts. One of the most common mordants over the centuries was alum, Mares in Estonian, an aluminium-based salt that was traded from the Mediterranean during the medieval period. And it was brought here since the 13th century, but we don't know if the trade also was active before that. Some plant species, such as Lycopodium, kollad in Estonian, clumps, they can accumulate naturally aluminium, and the past people have used them as mordants due they knew they knew that it worked also as a mordant, and it has been used. And third, also tannins can be used. Tannins are present in many plants, also in Estonia, and probably one reason why we have seen so much tannins in our dye analysis, it's because they have been used as mordants. So this is one of the tasks they can perform in the dyeing process. And also iron-rich water. But among local plants, the roots of northern bedstraw Gallium species, Madarad in Estonian, combined with alum, produce the brightest and most durable reds. Bedstraw red has gained an almost mythical status in Estonia, with nearly all warm-toned reds in historical textiles referred to by this name. And also in archaeological literature, it has been written that bedstraw was used to dye red, and bedstraw red has been used. In reality, the range of dye sources was much broader, as you saw in the table in the first slide of red dyes. And actually, the earliest known archaeological examples of bedstraw dyed textiles in Estonia date only to the 13th, 14th century areas in southern Estonia. So it wasn't spread before that. And I hope that the Estonians know that the early 13th century marks the beginning of the medieval period, which means that also the trade routes changed and new influences reached the area. And maybe this can be related to that, but we actually don't know. And in very rare cases, madder rubia tinctorum, which is in Estonian punavärvik ehk rapp, and which is definitely imported dye stuff here, has been used. And we don't know if the rural people used themselves. Did they buy imported dye stuff from cities and used it, or they bought already dyed yarn from the city? Anyway, in rare cases, we have discovered also madder, which was the main red dye source in medieval Europe. And other dyes, there is almost no information on other textile dyes of the period, such as yellows, brownish, greenish. First, the currently brownish finds do not enable visual distinction between different shades visually. And secondly, the dye stuffs of these other dyes are probably degraded because they are not that durable as blues and reds, and they are challenging to identify based using these methods that are available. But we know that in several instances tannins have been found, and tannins are on the one side, tannins can be used as mordants, but on the other side, tannins can give also different shades to textiles, for example, reddish, but more often brownish. So possibly these textiles, they're brownish. And also in this Craft textiles, you can see on the slide, unknown yellow compounds were found. So probably some kind of maybe local yellow dye stuffs was used, but unfortunately that's it. And this is it from my side, and I will give the word now to Liis.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So I am talking about dyes in the historical textiles, and mainly about dyes in the that we see in the 19th, 18th, and 19th century. So Riina did a really good first part. Almost everything she talked about, I am not going to talk about, especially although, for example, the blue dye was also very important during the 18th and 19th century. Because the presentation is short, I'm going to focus on the work and the research we've done during the Colour4CRAFTS project and talk about 2 local dyes and 2 imported dyes. And okay, so because not I hope not everyone is from Estonia, I wanted to lay out some important dates from this period that relate to our political situation, economic situation, and also about that are important in researching dyes from this area. So in 1710, Estonia became part of the Russian Empire. Before that, we were part of Sweden. And in Estonia, we had a really large population of Estonians that were mostly lived rurally, and most of them were serfs. So basically slaves that were not able to leave their parish without permission from the manor, and also who had quite poor living conditions, and they didn't have a lot of money, and they had limited possibility to earn money. And this meant that everything that they were able to get for free for dyeing was important. But then when we see dyed items, and we have information, when we find information about that imported dyes, so dyes that cost money, were used, it means that they were really important, and that the people spent money on something that was for show and not really for survival, important for survival. And in 1816, in the northern part of Estonia, in 1819, in the southern part of Estonia, the serfdom was abolished. But of course, not everyone became rich at once. So still in the 19th century, the Estonians were quite, well, not very wealthy. And about the sources, in 1860, a large-scale collection of Estonian folklore started by Jakob Hurt. And we have some of the oldest written sources by Estonians in Estonian from this collection. Before that, we have some information from the Baltic Germans from the 18th and 19th century. And in 1909, the Estonian National Museum was founded, and then at once they started a large-scale rural or peasant artifact collection. Also a lot of textiles were collected. So our textile collection in the historic period comes after the beginning of the 20th century. And in 1920s, Estonian National Museum started ethnographic fieldwork. And so the written sources from this archive are also very, very important. And like I already mentioned, we have writings from the Baltic Germans. And one thing I didn't mention is really interesting source are the newspaper adverts from the 18th and 19th century, which show what kind of dye stuffs one could buy. And one of the collection of Jakob Hurt is in the Estonian Folklore Archive in the Estonian Literary Museum, and it's all digitized, so available online. And in Estonian National Museum, we have the ethnographic archive, so written archive, but also textiles, so artifacts. That we can study and do dye analysis with. And actually during this project, the Colour4CRAFTS project, it was the first time that we did chemical dye analysis of Estonian historic textiles, so-called folk costumes. And one of my favorite sources and archives is the alphabetic dialect slip catalogue at the Institute of Estonian Language that you see on this photo. So the catalog itself is, I think, 5 or 6 times bigger that you see on the photo. And there are just slips with keywords in alphabetic order, but with the keyword you also have a sentence where this word was used, and you can find information about dyes and dyeing in this on these slips. And now, thanks to Colour4CRAFTS, we also have some dye analysis conducted in Kikirpa in Belgium. So from the local dyes, I'm going to talk about a black dye and a red dye. And I really like a notion by a Baltic German Petri. In 1809, he said that we have, so in Estonia, there were very many sheep. Most of them are have brown or black color. Wool, and so that the black and brown are basically national colors of Estonians. And you can see from the photo that the brown and black woolen overcoats were very common. They were very practical, and also because the color of the sheep wool was mostly brown, it was as a resource easily available. But often the people also wanted to dye the brown wool darker, and a possibility to do it was to use iron-rich mud that Riina also mentioned shortly. So in Estonian, the name for this mud was maage, and it is you can use it as a mordant, so as an iron mordant. When you have tannins from, for example, tree barks or from tree leaves that have fallen into the water, and you have iron, then you can dye black. And if you want to, there are in the Estonian Literary Museum, no, sorry, in the Language Institute, you have many slips that explain the word maage and how to recognize this mud that is iron rich. So it has to be covered with a shimmering layer, and the mud underneath this has the iron that is useful for dyeing. And you can also, when you find this type of water, you can often also see like this rusty brown mud from iron. And this type of mud was used to dye wool and linen materials both. With linen, it could be either yarns or fabrics, and with wool, just fabrics. And the mud was sometimes brought home for dyeing, but often whole fabrics were trampled into the mud and left there for days, and so they turned black. And this type of fabric was used to make breeches, so short trousers and overcoats. And also we have a source from the beginning of the 19th century from Setomaa, so southeast Estonia, that describes dyeing linen cloth fabric black for everyday clothing. And some sources mention that linen headscarves and aprons were dyed black and worn when the people were mourning, so women were mourning. And in Vigala, from Vigala, there is a source saying that the wool that was used for this type of dyeing was chosen black or dark brown, and then it was darkened. So they also used the color of the fibers themselves to get a darker color faster. And for now, we don't have a method that definitely tells us that this fabric or this artifact was dyed with iron-rich mud. We can determine the use of iron. For example, we have analyzed the overcoats in the Estonian National Museum using a portative X-ray fluorescence spectrometer that shows the presence of metals, including iron. And the analysis of the overcoats, it was really fascinating, the results. So the woolen fabric could show that there is iron in the fabric, whereas the linen fabric from white linen fabric from the same item that was used, for example, for pockets, had no iron. So definitely the wool was dyed with iron, but of course it could be iron-rich mud or it could be iron sulfate, which was a purchased mordant. Maybe Riina was just in Ottawa in Canada making a presentation, so maybe she got new ideas about how to determine whether an item or an artifact has been dyed with mud or with iron mordant, but she can comment on this later. And now we come to a red local dye. Just like with this iron mud, you could dye with this dye without the need of a mordant, which means that both of these dyes could be very old. We just don't know. We haven't found the proof yet. But logically, when it's a local dye, you don't have to buy anything. It could have been used already a long time ago. So a really fruitful research has been conducted during the Colour4CRAFTS with Alde Pakthon in Estonia and Paaxpuu, and about how to achieve red by rotting Alde Pakthon bark. We found 5 written sources in the archives describing that to get red from Alde Pakthon bark, you need to rot it. The time period for rotting was from a few weeks to over winter, and the method of rotting was either to leave the bark on the ground or dig it underground. Here are some pictures of the experiments that I made. And so on the left, you see unrotted bark, which is nice with a gray cover and yellow inside. And then for rotting it on the ground, it was just left just left on the ground, covered with a net so that no animal would scatter it. And then on the right, you see how which color it turned during the rotting. If the rotting did go on for very long, the bark could also be quite moldy, but then this bark was rotted for 10 months and no more mold and no unpleasant smell either. And so what are the results? If the bark was not rotted, it was just dried and kept in room temperature, these are the colors you get. And as you can see, almost no difference between mordanted on the bottom row, unmordanted or unmordanted yarns. And the more the bark, the older it gets, the more yellow the color got. So there were definitely some processes going on also during the drying. But when bark was rotted, so only after 2 weeks of digging the bark underground, you already get a red color and not yellow anymore. And at some point, the color starts to fade. So emodine, which is the dye molecule responsible for the dye red in this dye source, is starting to break down. But we have written 2 articles about this. So if you're interested, you can read them. They are both open access. One is in Studia Vernacula in an Estonian craft journal, and the other one is in Heritage in a special edition from the Dyes in History and Archaeology conference. And the question we had is, of course, do we have any textiles dyed with alder buckthorn bark? We found 2 textiles, which legends. So the description that was collected when the item was gathered by the Estonian National Museum. So the legend mentioned that the red yarns are dyed with alder buckthorn bark, and a pickup woven sash and a striped skirt. And I had really high hopes for the sash. I must confess, I really hope that it's alder buckthorn bark, but we did the Pikirpa, so Royal Institute for Cultural Heritage in Belgium did the analysis for all the red threads from the skirt and the red threads from the pickup woven sash. And well, I don't know if fortunately or unfortunately, anyway, the results were that there were no alder buckthorn bark dyed yarns. So there was Mexican cochineal, which we already could see from the color, but the brownish red threads were from soluble redwood, or better known as Brazil wood, in both instances. And those of you who don't know Mexican cochineal, so in Estonian cochinealitäid, or ethnographic literature, it's called putukapunane, bog red, is a scale insect growing in Central and originally from Central and Southern America, and that arrived in Europe after Europeans reached the Americas. And we have it in our textiles. We have written sources that tell about dyeing with the bog red. And we have also advertisements. Here is one from a newspaper in in 1864, telling that you can buy cochineal from the merchant Keller in Tartu. And what's interesting is that he refers to the dye stuff as something that you can use to dye a court red hue. So Estonians know court red or nööripunane or kuuenöörid quite well, and it is the red cords that are used to embellish our black or dark brown coats, mostly in the southern part of Estonia. And we have several sources saying that the cords were bought. So they may have been dyed at home, but they may have been dyed with professionals, or even, we don't know yet, the cords could have come to Estonia already dyed. And this is a really interesting contrast, I think. So you have this, it's really a symbol of in Estonia, the black coat with the red cords, and a symbol of nationality, of Estonian nationality. So you have this symbol, and maybe the black or dark brown woolen fabric was dyed with the local mud, but you have these red cords that are dyed with the scale insects from another part of the world, coming from across the ocean. And the Brazil wood, or the soluble redwood that was mentioned, is also quite common in our historical textiles, in the striped skirts and in peekaboo and sashes. We have many written sources mentioning it. Here is a piece of wood, a piece of Brazil wood in the collection of Estonian National Museum, where the legend really there is a really detailed recipe of dyeing description collected with this piece of dye wood, so that the yarn was first mortared, and then it was dyed yellow with birch leaves. It's a very common method to first dye yarn yellow and then dye it red to get a more stronger color. And then it was dyed with redwood. And to prepare the dye, the wood was chipped, so shaved into chips, and the chips were boiled, and then this dye liquid was used. And we can also see the mentions that, so from 18th, it's difficult to say which textiles are from the 19th and which are from the 18th century, because in the beginning of the 19th century, we also only had natural dyes. So an item could be, for example, a sash, it could be from the end of the 18th century, it could be from the 19th century. And in the 19th century, we already have the advertisements that show that we had these imported dyes, and also other information. But in a book by Jan von Jannau from 1786, he very slightly mentions that Estonians, at that time we were serfs, use money to buy dyes, among other things. So he's reasoning that the peasant should be able to earn money, and he says, and then he describes what they are using, or what they're needing the money for, and he says that that they need money to buy cloth to trim their garments, and that they need money to buy dyes, which they use for dyeing. So it must be something that was for sale and not local. And also we have this really great article written by Jüri Linnus already in 1967, where he discusses a questionnaire from 1810, where it was researched what do the peasants use money for, what do they buy, and there also it is mentioned that dyes are purchased to dye skirts, stockings, or long coats and sashes, and to dye red, blue, and black shades. Also, alum is mentioned. And so I come to the end of my presentation, and I would like to invite you all to our exhibition that is going to be open from January 16th until August 30th in the Estonian National Museum. And it's called The Color of Our Clothes, meie rõiva värvid, and all these themes also are mentioned there. So thank you for listening.